Hello, Claire Attic here, and I am delighted that you are joining me again here for another financially focused training topic. Now, I did have a lovely list of topics that I plan to teach you over the next few weeks, but I've decided to rip that up and rewrite it in light of the news yesterday from Boris Johnson that England will be going into another national lockdown on Thursday this week. So I've put together some of my thoughts and ideas of things that you can be doing now in your business to protect yourself and your business financials, and also looking at the longer term and some of the ways you need to be adapting how you work your business finances and the money side of your business to survive what will be coming your way. Now, I will start by saying that obviously the impact that the lockdown has on you in terms of your business and your personal life will vary massively depending on your own circumstances. For some of you, it will have little impact. It will be life as normal, just with a few inconveniences here and there. For some of you, the lockdown may actually present opportunity. We've seen a lot of businesses experience massive growth during 2020. But for some small business owners, it will be a really difficult and worrying time. You will be facing more financial challenges and a business that's already strained by everything that 2020 has had to throw at you. I particularly throw my heart out there to those who have invested a lot of money in making yourselves COVID secure to start back trading again. And you've invested a lot perhaps in the Christmas trade market, only to find that we're actually now facing another period of national lockdown. So particularly for you, those of you out there, I really do sympathise with your situation, and I will do everything I can to support you through these difficult times. So before we talk about what you need to be doing now in your business ahead of lockdown starting on Thursday, I wanted to just highlight some of the reasons that this is not the same as March, in the hope that you will actually draw some positives from it. For a start, this is not new to us anymore. If you take yourself back to how you were in March, it was all very different. It was all new. There was so much uncertainty involved. I, for one, could not comprehend how I would live my life, being contained in my house without all of the privileges that I enjoyed, being able to go out and about and live my life as I wanted to before lockdown. However, I've experienced it now. I now know that it is possible, and actually parts of my life were enjoyable, spending that time at home with the family, with that extra time for reflection and planning in my businesses and so on. We're also a lot more aware now of the types of financial support that the government can make available to us in terms of our small businesses. Now, I remember a few very dark days back in March when I closed my bricks and mortar business, and for a period of 3 days before the government announced the furlough scheme, the coronavirus job retention scheme, I actually thought that my business would close. I wouldn't be able to pay my staff, and my business wouldn't continue. And I have to admit, I cried for 3 solid days until those financial support packages were announced by the government. So now we are a little bit more aware of the types of support they can make available to us. We've got loans, we've got grants, we've got salary support packages and so on. So it's a little bit less scary this time round, and whilst we won't all be able to benefit from those financial support packages, we do know the types of support available to us. Now, another main difference between the lockdown now and the lockdown in March is the fact that the kids are able to go to school this time, and this has a huge impact for those of us who are parents. I myself have 3 very young children, and I know just how hard it was trying to deal with juggling my small business with having the kids at home. And not only a small business in crisis with big unknowns all over the place. I also had that burden and that responsibility of feeling that I had to be trying to homeschool my children so that they didn't fall behind in their education. Now, on the whole, most of the children are able to go back this time. Obviously, some will be home isolating, but this is a massive difference between now and then. We've also got to remember how far we have come since March. We have practiced so many of the skills that we need to endure the next lockdown. We're much better at handling the flexibility of people's calendars, when they can work during the day. We're more adaptable to locations that we can work in and our methods of communication. Now, all this has been learned throughout 2020, and we are now in that position of being able to just pick it up and run with it, as opposed to having to learn all those new skills and adapt to all those changes. But we do know something else that we weren't quite aware of in March, and that is the fact that this unfortunately doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Perhaps in March we lived a little bit with the naivety that this would be sorted out in a matter of weeks, possibly months, but I think very few of us envisaged that it would drag on for months, if not years, which is what we are facing now. So with that in mind, we need to be building that into our models of our business and also into our financials. Now, we do know that the government are moving us through different tiers. So we've got our tier 1, our tier 2 and our tier 3. And we also have this national lockdown that has been announced. So all of those represent different ways of our normal business cycle being interrupted. And I think this is something that we've got to come to expect, that actually we'll be moving in and out of periods of inactivity. And if this is something that impacts your business in terms of revenue streams, then it's something that we need to be planning for now. So what can we be doing right now in our businesses to prepare them for this upcoming lockdown? Well, the first thing I will be doing is communicate. You need to be talking to your customers, and if you have them, talk to your staff as well. You need to be listening to them, listening to any concerns they have, and understanding that their circumstances may be changing. It may be that your customers aren't impacted at all by this lockdown. Maybe it's business as usual for you. But even if that's the case, acknowledge that this is a change in the national setup and making sure that they feel reassured that business will continue as normal for you. So if you are in an industry where you are unable to deliver your goods or services during a period of lockdown or inactivity, you need to be communicating this carefully with your customers. Think about the language you are using. Rather than saying things like, I'm cancelling it, think about things like I'm postponing or I'm pushing back. This will serve one of three purposes. Firstly, it will help them feel still that they're part of the business. They're not just being pushed out, the relationship's not ending. Secondly, it will hopefully help to limit the number of refund requests coming through. They know that their product or service will be delivered, they just have to wait a little bit longer for it. And in doing that, it will hopefully help to preserve your cash flow position slightly. And also, it will save you the admin cost, the time to process all those refunds. So actually, those words that you use are ever so critical when talking to your customers. Another thing to think about, if you are one of those businesses that has to stop trading during lockdown, can you think about how you can flexibly manage your capacity levels once you are able to reopen? Is it a case that you can temporarily increase your capacity to take through a higher throughput of customers when you are allowed to open to make up for all that revenue that you have lost when you are closed? It may not be possible in all businesses, but it's definitely something to think about and plan ahead if you can. The next thing you need to be doing right now ahead of lockdown is scrutinising those costs. Now, this is something I talk about a lot. I am a little bit of a broken record, but it is also important, especially now, especially if you will be feeling the pinch of lockdown. Go through every single expense item that you have and really question why it's there. And if it is a nice to have, now is the time where we need to be stripping those out. We can be using that cash to help build up a buffer to help you survive any financial turbulence in the coming weeks and months. So question every single expense item and what's going through. I also want you to take the opportunity to be having conversations with your suppliers. So where you're buying in goods or services to help you deliver your business. Talk to them. Is there any way that you can renegotiate the prices? Is there any way that you can have longer payment terms? So actually that keeps cash in your business a little bit longer, giving you the chance to get some income in to keep that cash flow position positive. Or is there any way that you can potentially pause a payment? So actually if you've got a 12-month membership, you pause it for a month now and just add that cost on at the end of the year when things are hopefully starting to look a bit better. Definitely question those supplier payments and those costs. They are so critical right at the moment. Now, if you have staff in your business, then you need to be thinking proactively and taking action now in terms of what to do with those staff. Now, originally the furlough scheme or the coronavirus job retention scheme, which many of you will be familiar with, was due to end on the 31st of October. The good news is that has been extended, but for many of you, you may have been spending the last few days popping everybody on the new scheme, the JSS, the job support scheme. That actually isn't starting yet, so you will have to pop them back onto the furlough scheme. So there might be a little bit of admin to do with that, but make sure that you are addressing that as it comes up. The good news is that the furlough scheme will go through to the end of this lockdown period. And it will be modelled on the situation as we had in August this year. So for those who can't quite remember what that looked like, the government will pay up to 80% of your staff wages. The cost to you as an employer will be their national insurance and their pension contributions. Now they can have an element of part-time working within that furlough scheme. So if they are able to work in your business and you can pay them their full rate, then brilliant. If you are unable to offer them the hours, then you can have that scheme just to support them and keep them in work. Now, finally, I just wanted to touch on some of the government support packages that are available and to encourage you to be proactive in looking into these. Now, these vary massively depending on your business setup, your industry type, even your legal structure. So have a look what is available, and if you are needing to seek financial assistance, do it before you reach that critical moment. It can take time to put some of these in place, and if you wait until your ship has sunk, then that is too late. Be proactive. Start taking action now. I would add at the moment the loans are due, the coronavirus business loans are due to end on the 30th of November. So time is running out very quickly with those, and it does take time to put those in place. So get onto that if there's something you need. I wouldn't be surprised if there are alternative loan schemes going to be announced over the next few days, but watch this space. But at the moment it is just those loans expiring on the 30th of November. So be quick and take action with those. So that's things that you need to be looking at urgently right now. We're talking about making sure your business can survive the coming few weeks of national lockdown. However, as I mentioned at the start of the video, we are seeing a new way of doing business. This uncertainty, this period of cyclical interruptions is not going away anytime soon, and you need to build that into your plan to make sure that your financials and particularly your cash flow can keep up with the implications of this cyclical activity. The first thing you may want to do in terms of longer term planning is looking at possibly alternative revenue streams, diversifying your portfolio. Now, a lot of small business owners very successfully managed to pivot their businesses during the first lockdown that we saw at the beginning of the year. They were able to adapt their offering to satisfy the online virtual audience. Now, if this is something that you didn't do during the first lockdown, then it might be something you want to start thinking about, because if this is going to keep happening, then you need to start thinking about those alternative revenue streams to protect yourself and try and keep that revenue constant during the business cycle. So if you have a business that is impacted by these periods of inactivity as we start moving through the different tiers or the national lockdown, then you need to be really focusing on what are your higher profit margin goods or services. Those are the ones where you generate a lot more money, so money coming in, compared to the costs that it costs you to get those out the door. So when you are able to open the doors and start trading as you want to, you need to make sure that you are focusing on those higher profit margin areas, just to make sure you can maximize the revenue when your doors are open, so that when you do close, that you've got a little bit of that buffer building up. Which leads me on into the third thing you need to be concentrating on all the time, and that is building your buffer. So obviously we have a buffer for rainy day. We're always encouraged, both in our personal life and as a small business, to be saving towards that contingency fund. Now, I would argue that 2020 has been slightly more than a rainy day for most of us. It has been a horrendous thunderstorm, and there's no sign of it ending soon. But just because we are in the middle of that thunderstorm doesn't mean that there are things that you can be doing to start building that buffer now. So I mentioned obviously maximising that revenue that can come in during your periods of activity, but the other way of trying to get that buffer up is to be looking at those costs, which we discussed earlier. Scrutinise every single cost, get rid of those nice to haves, and then when that period of income will be coming in, those costs will be lower. That will let you build up that financial buffer, which could be a huge saviour for you in the coming weeks and months. I would also add on to the end of that it is time to get scrappy. If you are a business that is suffering from these massive fluctuations in your cash flow and your income, then it is time to really get scrappy, go back to basics and cut as many costs as you can out, so that you can still carry on trading, but you are not spending money on things that you don't vitally need to keep your business viable and afloat. Now, I've got one final challenge for you before I go. Now, for many of us small business owners, these are really worrying times. Many of you will have faced countless sleepless nights so far in 2020, and I'm sure there are quite a few still to come. However, I want you, when things get tough, and this is what I try to do, focus on the positives, focus on what you do have, and focus on what you have achieved. Now, if you were to go back in time and pick up the version of you in November 2019, pick yourself up and plonk yourself down right next to your version of you in November 2020, I think that version of you from 2019 will be quite staggered at what you have achieved this year. You have grown so much in resilience. You have achieved so much. You've survived, and in some places you've also even thrived. Now, this is a difficult time, and I'm not going to pretend that November is not going to be easy. It's going to be a very difficult month for so many people. But try to just hold on to those small little positives that you do have. It's very difficult at times, I know, but I know that you've got the strength to do this. Keep going, keep trying to smile, and always look at what those little positives are, even when there don't seem to be many around. So I will be doing a handful more of some financially focused training, looking at lockdown, the impact of lockdown, and what we can be doing with our small business finances over the next few weeks. I will join you back here, same time, same place next week. If you've got any questions at all in the meantime, then do head over to our Facebook group. I'll pop a link in the notes and ask away. But stay strong, stay positive, and bye for now.